And we're live, and we are not on a roller coaster ride. That's just Doc and her allergy meds making her a little bit wonky. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. The podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction, and we don't judge men who drink out of pink glasses. So with that being said, Glennie, you are officially Michael Glennie. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
I'm the man with the pink glass. My name's Mike Glennie. You just want the quick the rundown, the stats, or
just however you would introduce yourself to people who might not have ever heard of you.
Gotcha. Well, I grew up in Southern California. I got a degree in theater from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I'm currently running a restaurant with my family in the town I grew up in. And when I'm not doing that, I write silly science fiction books with my partner here.
Yeah, what kind of restaurant? Anything exciting?
It's kind of like just like a little hometown bar and grill, kind of like your local little spot, local watering hole with good food.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So we will have to, when we get your contact information, we'll have to list your restaurant. So if anyone's near you, they can drop off a huge tip and buy a bunch of food.
I like that. I like that idea. Yeah.
There you go. All right. And Mr. Ortiz, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. My name is Mike Ortiz. I currently live in Colorado, USA. Yeah, that's the way to put it. I am a producer and a writer. I have a long background in film and television. I worked out in Los Angeles and Hollywood for a long time, then worked over in New Zealand. At this current moment, I actually work for the state of Colorado in the Department of Human Services. So, yeah.
Not as exciting as slinging hash, but we will take it. Wait, I don't even know if he serves hash, but we're going to go with it.
JR, just stop.
It was funny in my head, dang it. All right.
And the next are funny in your head, like your math skills.
And the next part of the introduction, just to you. But as a grunt, I just know if I take both my shoes and my gloves off, I can count to 20. So I got everything I need to do. So how did we find them, dear listeners? So I actually found them through one of their YouTube videos. I liked it enough that I explored the universe because they had a little click here link. So speaking of those links, if you want to find these guests, you can scroll down to the show notes too. All episodes of YouTube generally have them, and you can learn lots of cool things. But so I followed the link, and it was cool enough that I reached out, and it took a little wrangling of the schedule, but here we are. We had to sober Mike up, Ortiz up, though, because, he just walks out in his Colorado mountain, contact high. He's out. It's sad. We had to send Glennie on a rescue team. It was ugly.
It was quite a drive, yeah.
It was. We appreciate what you did for our podcast, Glennie. We really do.
Cheers to that.
JR appreciates it when anybody else does the work.
All right, Doc. We got to ask them the religion questions, and then make sure they both have to answer correctly.
They will. I have faith in them. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly, gentlemen?
Ortiz, you lead.
So that is a complicated question, but I would ultimately have to say Star Wars, only because I grew up on both Star Wars and Star Trek. My parents actually were huge Trekkies. Not to go on a tangent, but they were those kinds of people that were just super normal and like, why are you into nerdy things? And then you found the Starfleet manual, like leather bound under their bed one night. And you were like, why is this your mom? And it was like, you found the dirty magazine basically. And she's like, it was a different time. You don't understand.
I think that's awesome.
It was the 70s.
But yeah, so it definitely like I remember finding a box of Star Trek novels in the basement from like the original show, and reading all of them. So yeah, so I definitely was fully exposed to that. But as a kid growing up, always was way more into Star Wars, and then Firefly is just super near and dear to me. But again, it's still going to be Star Wars.
How about you, Glennie?
I do enjoy and appreciate all three, but I was also indoctrinated to the Church of Star Wars at a young age, and I love it the most.
I don't like religions that make me cry that much.
Well, I hate to break it to you.
No, but I mean, that's how you always know somebody was a Star Wars fan when they come out of the movie theater. They're the ones crying.
Yeah. Fair. For multiple reasons.
Okay, now on to fantasy. Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Conan the Barbarian?
I'm gonna probably have to go with. Oh, that's tough.
Okay, make Glenn go first. You went first last time.
Glenny, go.
I couldn't really get into the Wheel of Time. I didn't mind Conan the Barbarian, but I did enjoy Game of Thrones, so I'm gonna go Game of Thrones.
That's fair. How about you?
I mean, I adored Wheel of Time so much. I think I started reading it when I was probably like 13. I think I found the first book. I still have it on the shelf behind me somewhere. I wanted that Heron sword so bad. But it's probably gonna be Game of Thrones, only because just at the end of the day, it's tough. That's tough. I'll probably have to go Game of Thrones though. That is tough though. They both have hurt me in different ways. Let's just put it that way. And
sometimes pain just doesn't feel like it should.
No.
Okay, anyway. They've hurt me in different ways. That's a ringing endorsement, people, if I've ever heard one. All right, so we here at the Blasters and Blades like both the fantastical and the scientific, but what was your guys' first love, sci-fi or fantasy? And we'll go with you, Glennie, this time.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think back when I was a kid, which one I kind of leaned more towards. I know growing up, as I said, I was really into Star Wars. I really enjoyed it. And I've always considered Star Wars more of a fantasy than a sci-fi.
Fair.
So I think
the original space fantasy.
Yeah, I think I would probably say I got more into fantasy than sci-fi in my younger years. But then as I got maybe in my teens, younger 20s, I appreciated sci-fi a little bit more.
Okay. And what about you, Ortiz?
It's probably going to be sci-fi. I've had a long love affair with fantasy. But again, I was raised by Trekkies. My dad has like an original VHS copy of Forbidden Planet that we used to watch like anytime one of us was sick.
I'm kind of jealous of you. No lie.
Yeah, well, it's crazy that all these things when again they'd see you reading, I don't know, any sort of fantastical book, and they'd always be like, "Why are you wasting your time with that?" And you're like, "What are you talking about?"
I mean, I get it. My parents were definitely geeks and nerds, but they were not like super hardcore Trekkies. So like when I was, they were like, "Okay, Cisca."
But yeah, again, overall, it's probably still gonna be science fiction.
Okay, so since you said science fiction, Ortiz, what was your first memory of engaging with science fiction? Was it Trek, or was it Star Wars, or was it something else?
I thought you said Shrek for a second, and I was like, "That's science fiction."
The best science fiction of all time.
It is. Well,
sorry.
Oh, geez.
I'm sure someone could figure out a reason that's true, but I'm going to let them do that heavy lifting.
Right.
That's going to be hard.
Don't violate your profile, JR.
I mean, I will say this in regards to early memories. I don't know what it was, but it was literally a mobile VCR with a tiny, maybe 2x2 screen on it. Tiny screen. I think it was used maybe more for like video porting, like where they could review the footage that they were shifting from one tape to another. But my mother would have these like PTA meetings or whatever, and she would drag me and one of my brothers with her, and we would sit in the back of the school library. We would plug that sucker in, and we would watch The Empire Strikes Back. And I remember doing that. I can't even tell you how many times I would sit in that school library in that back corner watching Empire Strikes Back on a screen, this big.
Awesome. That's dedication.
Theater was the size of a Lego.
So what about you, Glennie? What was your first memory of engaging in sci-fi then, since that was your first love?
I'm trying to think while he was talking. I'm not sure if it counts. I guess
you weren't listening to me while I was talking. Thanks, man.
I never do. You know.
Hey, they're like this. They are.
I would say it's more fantasy, and this is going to come off weird, but I think it tracks. Power Rangers.
Okay.
Being a huge Power Ranger fan early on, I thought that was kind of fantasy, but also kind of sci-fi in a sense. I watched for fun. I watched it last year as an adult, and even though it was very childish, there were some episodes that were actually like very interesting.
Are you
And
excited? They're doing a movie, a reunion movie.
yeah, I saw that. I'm kind of stoked on it. Obviously, bummed that
I
JDS not
saw
in
the
it, but
trailer. Hey JR,
yeah.
maybe that's what we can do. We can all watch it on Netflix and have Glenny back.
I'd be down.
I would.
I'd be down.
I would. Yeah, depending on which version of Power Rangers. I mean,
No,
they
no,
did
no.
have the.
They're bringing back Power Rangers from the OG on for this
No,
movie.
I know. I'm saying the giant Megazord robot machines definitely make it qualify for sci-fi as far as I'm concerned.
That's fair.
Yeah,
And
I
aliens.
think we should totally do a movie review over it.
All right, it's consider it done. We will pencil it in whenever it comes off. Glenny, you've just been voluntold.
Voluntold.
I
I like
think
that word. Okay.
Your many hours in the Call of Duty Army have prepared you for this exact moment, sir.
I'm
All right.
I'm looking forward to serving. Yes.
Outstanding. So, what is it about speculative fiction that includes both the sci-fi and the fantasy, Glenny, that you love so much?
I kind of like it because if it's realistic or not realistic, it kind of gives you the freedom to explore things that that could be possible in our imagination. Like, because it's being confined. My understanding of speculative fiction is obviously things that are not realistic necessarily, and instead of being confined by realism, you can kind of add these magical qualities or this kind of science fiction that's not really possible, but in this universe it is, and you can create things that you can't normally create. And I find that very interesting, and that's why like most of these titles that we've talked about have always captured, I think, me and a lot of people, because they are so interesting, like to create new realities, if you will. That's kind of what I've liked about it.
Okay, I like that. What about you, Ortiz? What is it about speculative fiction that you love so much that you made it a career?
I don't know. His answer was so deep. I don't know if I could follow that. Just, I should just tap out now. No, I think some of imagination is huge, right? Obviously, it's that capability of being able to envision something and just kind of project it out to another person, and that's a beautiful thing. I think it's another aspect is just kind of seeing almost like the extent of humanity in 1,000 different facets. We have our sense of reality, our sense of history, and everything tied to that. And now through movies, books, whatever, comics, you have a chance to take that human experience and kind of relocate it somewhere else or in a different kind of sphere of reality or whatever. And it's almost fascinating to kind of see, the author, the creator's vision of how someone would react to that, or you as the reader or the viewer, like how would, considering that, like how would I experience this new reality that someone has put forth. I think it just really engages your mind in so many ways and levels. And then all of that comes into the imagination where, not only are you enjoying what somebody has imagined, but it is now seeping into your own and kind of fueling further adventures. I think that's a big thing about why so many people gravitate to fan bases, is that, like, in a way, mentally, you get to be part of a journey forever, and you hunger for more of it.
Yep, that's a good answer. And you said you weren't going to be deep. All right,
Yeah,
Doc.
I was saying, geez.
I had
Yeah,
to.
you're trying to make Glenny look bad. I appreciate the banter you two have.
Yeah.
So people think it's just Doc and I that give each other a hard time, but you two are doing it too, and I'm here for it.
Well, I think fandom gives people a sense of community. Also, that
True.
like a lot of us don't necessarily have out. Like we might have our churches and our PTA groups and stuff like that, but it's a certain community that's just about one thing.
Right. It's a shared experience of something you both enjoy, and that's a beautiful thing.
So how did that love transition into you doing stuff in the wild world of speculative fiction? Normally we ask about writing, but you guys are multi-talented and multi-focused. So
he's blushing.
You can't tell, but yeah. I'm sorry, Glenny. I'm going to jump in on this.
Go for it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I was like, especially when it came to writing, I tried to write forever as a kid, especially. I think a lot of people do, especially anyone that loves books or anything like that. It really was that love of storytelling where I love stories so much that I want to be able to tell my own in whatever facet I can, whether that's playing like a game in the yard with my siblings or friends to now putting words on page. And so, yeah, it's just been kind of a long adventure of that, of just kind of the desire to kind of build your own, as I said, stories, but yeah, experiences, if you will, whatever. I'm the youngest of a lot of kids, so they all kind of left or grew up or didn't want to deal with me anymore. So I had a lot of time by myself at a certain point in life. So a lot of time in your own imagination to kind of develop these concepts, ideas, these worlds, if you will. That's a lot of where Dawnward originally came from, was just me as a kid, kind of building my own story.
Okay, that's a good answer.
So I have to answer now. That's what we're saying.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the writing and kind of we would say behind camera, front of camera, I kind of grew up always wanting to engage in creative arts, but I did grow up kind of being more of that, like, you should go and do sports. You know what I'm saying? So in high school, I played football, and it wasn't until my senior year I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to do this, so let's just try it. And I did theater, and I fell in love with it. So that's why I majored in theater. And kind of like Ortiz said, I was writing crap when I was a kid. I wrote little books on notebook paper and stapled them together, and I was like, see, I'm a novelist.
Adorable.
Yeah, it didn't sell much. I think I sold 3 copies, but
and all of them were to your mom. We approve.
Hey, mom, dad, and sister. Okay.
My son does that.
Right. Volume 2 did a little better, but anyway. So I was always trying to write something. I think I wrote my first full script and finished it at 19, and I was so proud of it. And then you forget about it and you look at it later, and I was like, wow, that's really trash. But yeah, so
keep it or did you save it?
I 100% wish I saved it. I didn't delete it or anything, but I lost it over time. Because I would love to reread it and just make fun of myself.
So many authors I know are like, my first manuscript, I burned it alive.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It was bad. My book on notebook paper was great, though. My first script was bad. Yeah, so going through college, performing really like makes you want, as kind of like Mike said, where you want to tell your own stories. Acting out these other stories already written kind of makes you want to, well, I want to create this. I want to write my own character. I want to do this. And I can't speak for Mike. The things I've written for Dawnward so far, there are certain characters where I'm like, if this was a movie, I would play that guy. And it's kind of a funny thing coming from acting and writing. Almost everything I write, be it a script or a book, there's always a character in it where I see myself in it, as in I would like to play that character. So a lot of that drives my writing to an extent to where it's like, I would want to do this. I would want to be in this movie version. And at the same time, kind of like Mike said, just creating our own worlds is very fun and interesting.
So when you switched from football to the acting, did you get grief from your fellow teammates?
I did and I didn't. So I was on varsity my junior year, but it was very much like, because as a junior you should be on varsity. So I wasn't very good by that point, and my heart wasn't into it. So I really didn't hang out with the team that much anyway. So when I kind of dropped out at the end of that season, I think everyone was kind of like, yeah. Like, they're just like, okay. Yeah, we saw it coming. And then when I started doing theater, they're like, yeah, no one really gave me much grief for it. It was kind of just, I only did 1 play my senior year. And yeah, no one really gave me that much crap about it. I don't think, yeah.
There is still hope.
Right. It wasn't your typical teenage movie where they threw me in the bathroom and gave me a wet willy or anything. I survived that. Okay.
Ew.
I'm sitting here and going, there's still hope.
Yeah.
My Viking child does football. I know nothing about football except for the things you don't want the mom to know. So it gives me hope that he might find. No, I'm kidding. He loves it, and I'm okay.
She channels her inner Miss Bobby Boucher, and so
I don't even know what that means.
It's a reference to the movie The Water Boy. Jeez, Doc, come on. It's like you never had a television before.
I did. How do you think I watched Star Trek? Star Wars. And,
All right, Doc.
And
Get
Babylon.
us back on track.
Trying to tell me I don't know how to use a TV set.
See what I put up with you two? Jeez.
I'm watching.
All right, Doc. Next question.
Okay, so can you give us any examples of real life experiences that shaped who you both became as storytellers?
Woof.
Deep.
I know we got a few of those.
Identity would be a big one, I think. Mike, don't raise your eyebrow at me. Turn the camera off. I have to curse this guy out for a minute. Now,
now we're back from that unexpected break in an interview. Hopefully this is seamless, but they've hugged it out. We're good.
So a lot of my stories, I will say, like as far as feeling out of place, I don't want to say unwanted, but out of place. Like I said, growing up, I did feel like I was one of those people who did a lot of things because that was what you're supposed to do. So there is that, and there's a little bit in the novel I wrote, but in generally speaking, I write a lot about trust, identity, society. No, I wouldn't go that deep. And honestly, I just write about things I'd like to see, what I'd like to watch and read.
It's the Paula Deen theory of creation.
Add more butter.
She was asked in an interview if there was anything she cooked that she didn't like, and she goes, "Why would I cook it then?"
It's a pretty fair answer, honestly.
I mean, as a chef or a creator, you have to sample it along the process so much. You don't like that. Why make yourself miserable?
Sure.
All I know about her is she got hit in the face with a turkey on national television.
She got cast in a movie. She's really good at it.
That's good, but she got hit in the face with a frozen turkey, and that was hilarious.
That sounds like it would hurt like so much.
It probably did, but I've got a warped sense of humor.
With a frozen turkey.
I know what I'm doing after this.
All right, so what about you, Ortiz?
They are with?
Yeah, Ortiz, give us your deep answer.
My deep.
We're listening.
Come on, shovel it out.
All right. So I do think some of it is, the classic, like, I want to create things that I would like, because otherwise what's the point? Plus, any act of creation is a long endeavor, and if you are not at least somewhat enjoying it, then again, why are you doing this? But I think some of my own work I think some of it's influenced by this weird, we'll call it this little tug of war that sometimes occurs inside of me, where there's a part of me that's like this big humanist that's like, yeah, we can do it. Like, we are the world. Yeah. And then this other part of me that's like, everyone sucks. We all suck. We just burn it all down. So just that yin and yang of humanity itself. And again, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one and I'm just weird, but I definitely think that kind of has influenced, my own personal creations in terms of kind of how characters view the world, or in terms of how the world exists in their world, et cetera, et cetera. For as uplifting as that is.
So moving on to more uplifting topics. So we asked them, dear listener, we always ask the veteran question, and Glennie gives it to us on excellent assured. He knows exactly what it's like in the military because he's got hundreds of hours in Call of Duty. So he's basically a general. Yeah. So we wanted to thank you for your service, Glennie.
Of course, and you have to throw in multiple tours: Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Battlefield. Look, you can't undersell the service I've given to this country.
And sometimes the Galactic Empire through Battlefront.
I was going to say Halo. I've been there. Mass Effect. Listen, I've done more for this universe than you can imagine, and I demand respect. That's all I'm saying.
As you should. But Ortiz, Glennie mentioned that you did serve in the terrestrial military. So what branch did you serve in?
I did a stint in the U.S. Army.
It's not quite Halo level, but what'd you do in the Army?
So I was in the 3rd Infantry.
No, but the bullets are real.
It technically was NBC, but then they changed it to Seaburn. So basically a glorified chemical janitor with a gun.
So you tortured people in the CS chamber for fun?
No. That job was reserved for smart people. We were the people that would go in and clean it up afterwards to make sure the smart people were safe.
So is it true they plant the tree right outside the exit of all those gas chambers just to make sure you don't actually run? Everyone does anyway.
I can neither confirm nor deny that, sir.
Because I'm just saying there's a lot of privates that slam into that tree that's conveniently right by the exit.
And it seems to be at every post that it's there. Because
Absolutely.
I did not do basic where JR did basic because, well, I'm not a misbegotten boy.
I can whisper that,
wayward gentlemen.
I can whisper that it does feel like some of the people who designed layouts may have had a rather sadistic sense of humor.
All right, that does confirm all of my suspicions.
And the amount of time they just made us sit in mop suits for zero reason in the Arkansas heat.
Yeah, doing it in Georgia sucks a lot too.
I did it at Fort Bliss.
Is it hot there?
Listen,
I mean,
my living room, it was kind of stuffy at times. But I would adjust the thermostat, and I was okay. I had a great time. I can't relate to this.
Can we just acknowledge for once that I am not the pogiest of the pogues? He is.
Doc likes you, Ortiz, though, because she plays with chemicals for a living. She blows up labs as a chemist. I mean, does research.
I only did.
I mean, I've seen you on the news once, Doc. All I'm saying is I saw you on the news. We'll talk offline about that. We don't want you to admit anything incriminating on air.
Cut the black. Let him have it.
Right. So how do you feel like, Ortiz, how do you feel like your time in uniform affects the way you tell stories now?
I mean, I think it's going to have influences here and there. I will say one of the things that always kind of stays is the kind of the bond that people have. And some of that is trauma bond. And some of that's also just the bond of this is the person you're stuck with for day in and day out, for good or evil. If you don't like this person, well, guess what? You're going to see them every morning, and you're
doesn't matter.
And then also the one thing that still stays with me is the fact that you might spend all this time with this person in this one capacity, and that's your view of them. And then you turn the corner, and they're in their civvies, and you're like, wait, what? You're like a person?
I think that happens more to females or women in the military, I think.
Yes, it did.
Than anybody else, because when I was in, our hair had to be up, our uniform couldn't be form fitting. Yep. And if you're a curvy female, it means that basically you look heavier set than you really are in uniform.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
I mean, ACUs don't give a person a shape. They're just sort
of. Yeah, I have literally walked past people in civilians that did not know that it was me.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of disturbed.
I never had that problem with Cortana.
Cortana was a loyal friend.
Tell me how many clothes does Cortana wear?
Enough.
Whatever the Microsoft and 343 Studios said was appropriate for that, year of censorship.
That's true.
It varies. And we appreciate. Well, we'll move on. All right. So, Ortiz, do you ever draw on people you knew that you served with when you were in the military, when you're writing your characters?
Actually, not as much as you think. Usually, I have such horrible ADHD that sometimes I'm more likely to pull from people I know, like currently in the time that I'm writing, than from someone way in the past, if that makes any sense.
It does. You can always tell when I'm at the coffee shop and writing because some of the names just sort of jump out at you. So I feel your surroundings make a difference.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some people that might influence here and there, but it's never anything where I'm like, this person is that person. You'll never guess. But it's just, it's never really been quite that.
Okay. So we've talked about how you engage with content as the creator because based on your military service. Has it affected how you engage on the readers or the consumer of like movies and such since you've gotten out?
I think one of the biggest things that affects me is how much my wife yells at me for when I critique things I see on the screen.
Yours too? All right. Not just me.
Such as, hey, they wouldn't be wearing that helmet in 1996, or
See,
that's
the nice thing about being single. Nobody yells at me.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of doing those sort of things where, and some of it's also not even just like, that experience. It's just having done any iota of research, and you're like, I'm not paid $1 million. How come I know this?
Yeah.
Mike does that a lot to me when I write anything, so I understand his wife's problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, and some of that might just be experience, some of that might just be whatever. Some of it is also the fact that my father was a physicist who, despite loving Star Trek, had no sense of like imagination. So he was telling me how Godzilla couldn't be breaking the concrete like that because concrete doesn't break like that.
Oh my God, he sounds like Sheldon or my brother.
I think I'd like him.
I think one of my favorite was I was watching some movie. I can't remember. It was like an old sci-fi movie, and somebody's on the computer like, "We gotta get into the system," and my dad was like, "Yep, used to use that program. It was terrible back in the day. They wouldn't be using it for that because it was that bad." Have you ever seen the movie Sunshine?
I have.
I quite like that movie. I thought it was very good. I had to turn it off because he couldn't stop laughing. I was enraged. I was like, "Come on, man, just like enjoy the experience. It's just a movie." The science made him lose his ever-loving mind. So
I feel his pain very much.
So I'm actually from the school of Handwavium. I'm an alumni of Handwavium University, so I don't care as much about the science. If I have questions, I'll bug Doc, and then I'll ignore her anyway. So, your dad would probably hate me too.
So yeah.
Look at the scroll bar, children.
I don't. 85,000 equals 8 times 0.5. That's Greek, Doc. Let's move on. Ask the fandom questions.
I'm just gonna leave it there until you figure it out. Okay.
You know that's not gonna happen.
I know, that's why I can leave it forever. So transitioning from the writing side into some of the stuff from a fan angle, have you had any cool fan art or anybody cosplay one of your characters yet?
I'm gonna let Glennie answer this first because he's so handsome.
None of my specific characters. I know early on Mike told me in the past that people wanted to borrow some of the uniforms and armor from the short films to cosplay in. Obviously not allowed. That's our stuff. Sorry. But yeah, Mike can elaborate on that. Mr. Ortiz.
So yeah, as he said, we did have several people that asked to borrow, especially the main suit of armor for Dragon Con specifically, on many occasions, which I always thought was really fun because as a kid,
I had nothing to do with it.
But probably the most interesting quote unquote fan interaction I think we've ever had was I don't know, 2014, 2015. So it's been quite a long time ago. We wrote a spec script for a feature set in the world. And we weren't sure what we were doing with it. We were just kind of exploring certain things. And I gave it to some people that I knew, kind of saying like, "Hey, what do you think about this? Take a look." And one of them, a friend of ours named Charlie, got back to me and said, "I'm going to make like a prototype little like proof of concept film for this." And I was like, "Dude, how?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. Like, I just want to do it. I can't not." I was like, "What?" Like, okay. And so then I just kind of let it alone because I figured, he'll see a bird and get distracted. But no, like a week later, he texted me like, "Hey, come down to my office." And so I did. And he had brought in like a bunch of actors and stunt guys and makeup people and like camera crews and was determined to shoot like sections of this, work in progress script that we were developing. Because he just wanted to be a part of it that much. It was really, really cool, but also a little surreal when people are like, "Hey, who are you?" And you're like, "The thing you're doing is the thing that we wrote that."
So what is your coolest or funniest fan interaction since you started?
I don't know if I'd say one that I really enjoy is, again, I worked in New Zealand, and one of the short films we shot there, and it was the town we shot in was about 30,000 people, but just the amount of local celebrityness that we took on, being the Americans there to shoot this movie, where you'd go into like the grocery store and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're the Americans," and you're like, "Oh, you know us?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw you in the paper." Any Kiwi listening is going to try and stab me. I'm so sorry. That's not how you sound.
Yeah, you know how you defend yourself from a Kiwi trying to stab you? You hand them a Kiwi. It works every time. They go into epileptics fits and walk away.
But yeah, that was definitely a like cool and surreal kind of experience where you'd go places and people would be like, "Hey, like, oh my gosh, it's you guys! That's so cool." So yeah,
I do remember that. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a real treat. They were all very, like, everyone we met on that experience is just super like kind and helpful. And at one point, one of the suits of armor was chipping because I guess it just wasn't sealed well. And we're in the middle of shooting. We're desperate. We need to patch it up, and we can't find anything. And someone ran to a little convenience store. They call them dairies, and was trying to find something, like anything. And so he asked the people, like, "Hey, I need something." And the girl was like, "Well, what do you need it for?" And it's like, "Oh, we're part of the filming thing." And she's like, "Oh, like, cool. What do you need?" And he explained some sort of red paint. And she's like, "I don't have anything, but I have my nail polish. Here you go. Take it." So he comes running back from the store with this girl's nail polish so that we could try and polish the armor in between shots.
Nice. Little field ingenuity. So this is the part of the the interview, Ortiz, where you get to tell us what you're known for. So what have you created? Like, what's your resume, as it were?
Well, so my creative resume mainly hangs around the Dawnward universe. The Dawnward universe, which is a collection right now of several short films. There's several novellas and one novel. There's another novel coming. There's more novellas coming. We have a lot of kind of irons in the fire regarding it in terms of things like audio dramas, audiobooks, graphic novels. We've long explored things like board games and stuff like that. But that's I would say that's like my biggest claim to fame in personal creation. I've obviously, done other things. I've, worked on a whole bunch of different movies and stuff for different companies. But again, that's like a job. That's not you getting to flex your own creative outlet. So, and even in the realm of things like Dawnward, as much as it's engrossed a chunk of my life, it's still not everything that I would like to do. And there's, a fat stack of potential book ideas sitting around waiting for me to actually give them the time of day that they deserve. Yeah, so that about sums it all up.
All right. What about you, Glennie? What is your creative resume?
Creative resume. Like I said, in my early 20s, it would be a lot of college productions of like theater productions, community theater productions. I've been in probably half a dozen to a dozen short films and independent films that you'll probably never even hear of. For probably better for your benefit, but and then recently, as far as Dawnward's concerned, I was a producer on Ascendance, the movie you watched, and then I'm also writing the books with Mike there, taking his little lead.
All right. So
you were in Valkyrie,
and I also was a background actor in Valkyrie, starring Tom Cruise. No big deal.
Yeah.
And I also run a podcast which is watched by a couple dozen people.
And
what podcast?
That feeling.
Sorry?
What podcast?
It's called The Fake Philosophers.
Okay. Is it related to YouTube? Is it related to the? Is it related to science fiction and fantasy, or?
It's kind of a little bit of everything. We kind of talk philosophy, politics. If there is sci-fi or fantasy that comes out, we'll talk about that too. Kind of a little bit of everything.
Okay, we'll link that in the show notes, dear listener, if you want to check that out. You've always got plenty of more hours in the day to listen to more podcasts than us, so we'll do that for you. All righty. So this is the part of the intro. Well, I keep saying introduction. Man, I need more coffee. Clearly, or
Long
maybe I've had too
introduction.
much. It's a long introduction, people. So this is the part where we're going to shamelessly shill for the man. In this case, it's the Dawnward universe who sponsored this episode. So we're going to share some of their commercials. We'll do one. We'll come back, talk about it, because they've got 3 of them, and they're all pretty cool. So we're going to start with the one that Glennie says is sizzle. So we've got a sizzle with you. All right, I do think it was sizzling. Is that the one that was filmed in New Zealand?
That's actually that's a bunch of different movies.
Okay.
So yeah, some of them were in New Zealand, some of them were in the States. So that's because it's a sizzle reel. It's just a collection of all sorts of projects cobbled together.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're gonna show some more. So that's some of what they did, and now we're gonna show the Dragoon trailer.
Nuclear annihilation should have been humanity's end.
Bloody hell!
Yet, man crawled from the rubble and found the hope of salvation in the Guardians and the Dragoons. The Dragoons were bioengineered warriors with a fixation on martial perfection. Both vied for mankind's allegiance, each claiming to offer the better future. But rather than shepherding unity, they would once again pit humanity against itself.
Look at you! Like an animal!
You gonna be petty about this?
So there's a little known fact, dear listener, that Glennie actually sang the background music. Ortiz just kicked him repeatedly in the groin so he could hit those high notes, but it was totally worth it. I would say A+ for effort and A for quality, Glennie. You did a great job.
And I was uncredited too. I did that all from the heart.
He's multi-talented. I just don't want people to know.
Yeah, you don't want him to get hired away by other people. I get it. You got to protect the merchandise.
Got to stay humble.
So, what's the story of the Dragoon anthology? Anthology, I tend to think of those as books, but this is obviously film.
So in 2019, I'm going to go with 2019. Let's go with 2019. There was a film festival in New Zealand in the area and the town that we shot in. And they did a 2-day festival. One day was a whole bunch of, local films that people had made. And then another was every single Dawnward short that had been made, many of which had been shot in the area by local people as well. So they thought it'd be cool just to kind of put them all together in one little day of short films. And that was also the premiere of Ascendance, which had been made in that area as well. So so that's what that was. That was the commercial that they did for it in the area.
Okay, so when Kiwis watch movies, do they eat popcorn too, or do they have something weird that they do?
No, they eat popcorn. They love popcorn.
Okay, just checking. I wasn't trying to tell any mom jokes like Doc did. I was being serious.
No. In the TRMN, we have a Kiwi who shows up to Steading Day every year, and we give him kiwis, and he gets kind of epileptic. It's kind of fun.
Are they golden?
Doc also had a
we need to get golden ones for him. We can totally do that.
They're delicious.
I mean, they are kind of good. All right, and this is the last one, people, and then we'll move on to let them talk more about the universe. But I just thought seeing was believing, and since we're talking film. All right, so that was the universe. You've seen it. You believe it. Now we'll have the links. You'll have to go and watch them all. They were really good. I'll personally be getting the novellas and the novel to review for the reviews I'm doing for Upstream, dear listener, and we'll share those when they go live. As you know, we've been sharing them on the page. But since Doc is all about the costuming, since she runs Dragon Con's costume contest.
Whoa. I don't run Dragon Con's costume contest. I host a costume contest at Dragon Con. We have so many at Dragon Con. Do not throw me under the bus like that.
Look, there's like 100 people at Dragon Con. There's no reason to get fancy about titles. All right. So what's the story of the armor that you guys made? Did you guys make it yourself? Did you modify like the Stormtrooper kits you can get?
So that armor was actually built by a company called Blue Realm Studios down in Texas. They had done the live action Halo 4 commercials, and I'm trying to think of everything else they'd done. They did a bunch of projects from Rooster Teeth. I think they did like a Titanfall little thing. So yeah, they had some high profile projects.
No, that definitely, you can tell it's not like just a rip off of The Mandalorian. There's enough different truly that they've sculpted to be very unique.
So yeah, that was actually CNC'd out. So that was pretty interesting. They sent us a video where they had the block of, I guess, initially foam, and the machine just going through. And yeah, we'll call it the T-visor, the Mando visor, actually has been the bane of our existence, because way back in the day when we had armor concepts drawn up, we said, which one looks the best? And everyone said, that one looks awesome. And we're like, cool, we think it's cool too. And then we made it. And then everyone went, why do you have the Boba Fett helmet? And we're like, we don't.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to, for the very rare moment, I'm going to be the history nerd here that instead of JR, which is that T look of the Mando is incredibly common throughout history.
Very knight-like.
Like, you name a culture. You name a culture, they had that kind of a helmet.
Right.
Because it is honestly the most effective way to include airway as well, which as a medic, airway is always important,
yep.
But also vision. And so, I mean, it is just everybody naturally gravitates to it also because they've seen it throughout their lifetime, even if they didn't recognize that's what they were seeing.
Right. Yeah. And like, it's a very cool aesthetic. And I've always loved it. It's just become really, really annoying to the point that we've actually changed the helmet design so that I stop hearing that.
I actually can empathize with you on that one.
What I really like is when people make those comments about, oh, you ripped off this other property. And I'm like, dude, this one was first. What are you talking about? Check the production dates. People get finicky about that stuff.
I watched as somebody told an SCA Knight that he ripped off Game of Thrones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was fun. Luckily he had a great sense of humor. It could have ended badly otherwise.
Absolutely. All right. So before we dive in any too much deeper, can you tell us what the origin story for the Dawnward universe is? Where'd you come up with the idea? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, overindulging in that Colorado marijuana air?
That sweet, sweet air. That
Sweet,
cush
sweet
air.
air.
No, so as I kind of alluded earlier, I reached a point in my life where, as the youngest, I was kind of alone. My siblings either didn't want to play with me anymore or they had their own things to do. So it actually originally started by kind of like things I would play with my toys in my room. That was the initial start of it. And then that grew into, me coming up with more ideas or writing down little stories and it was all very basic and very, very childlike. Cause again, I was a kid. I was probably like, as I said, like 12. And I would revisit it over the years and add a little more or change a little bit. And once I got to a certain age, I realized like, oh, wow, like I've spent a lot of time with this. I should probably do something with it. And so I was actually working with some board game illustrators at the time on a different project. And I was like, hey, can you do some of these, while we're working together? And they were like, yeah, cool, no problem. So they did a couple concept bits and, kind of started slowly building up from there. And then I got hired on this movie called RZ9, and I was working in the costume department. And this one day we were filming in the desert, and they told me I needed to outfit this rando guy as like a militia soldier. And I was like, hey, rando guy, what's your name? And he's like, my name's Glenny. And so I kitted him up and sent him on his way. But we stayed in touch. And then I can't remember exactly. Right around that same time, I had been working with another someone I'd gone to school with, who we had actually gotten the ball rolling on this web series, which was about mercenaries, and it was cool, and it was going to be a really fun thing. It was like a choose your own adventure web series, and basically the funding got pulled because the people funding it didn't like that we were going for more of a mature story than, so they were like, we're not going to give you money for that. And so he asked me like, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, I want to make a movie about like, this crazy thing that I've been working on for the past however many years. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? But present me some scripts and we'll see. And so I did, and he got some money, and that was Downward, which was the first film we shot in central Pennsylvania in 2014. It did very, very well in terms of just kind of like little festivals. And then at one point, I actually had a meeting with Warner Brothers, and, it was straight like, this is it. I've made it. And I still remember the end of that meeting was an executive looking at me going, we like it, but can you put zombies in it? And I went, and I was very like, WTF? Sure, I guess. And it was around that point that Glennie and I got back in touch more steadily. And he basically said, hey, what you have is really special. We should try and do more with it. And that blew me away because never in my life had someone else actually said, this is cool. People have been like, oh, that's fun. Whatever. That's neat. Look at you. Good boy. Like, oh, have a good one there, Schnookums. And so it was somebody who was actually like, no, like this has some depth. This is really cool. We should do more with this. And so from there, he and I like started working on spec scripts. We got Ascendance going. And then in the year of our Lord 2019, we had a feature ready to go, primed, and it was going to be awesome. And we were in the middle of casting, and we had like hired this guy who makes like crazy puppets just to make one of the monsters, and it was going to be just a super fun movie. And then I remember we had this meeting over Zoom with some other producers and the director of photography, and I said, hey, have you guys seen this thing about this like COVID thing? Do you think that? And one of the producers said, nah, that's not going to affect us. And then everything, kind of
went the way it went.
Yeah. And then suddenly the market crashed, and all our investors, no longer were super excited to give us money. And then again, Glennie and I had a heart to heart. And that's when we kind of decided to do the novellas and the novels, as it meant we had a lot more control. It still takes time, it still takes money, but it's not literally hours of our lives and our kind of hearts and souls that can just get dashed away, be so beyond our control. Like it was really disheartening to have everything I somewhere I still have actually a board laid out from that year, from those meetings, where it's like every scene lined up for this feature, like set up, and like I had done like costume boards for like this character wears this and this and that, and like we had done so much. We'd seen like dozens and dozens of actors and actresses, and we had location scouts in the field. Like there were so many things ready to go, and then just done.
Yep.
Have you guys thought about working with someone like Dust, who routinely puts out quality, like short content that looks better sometimes than what Hollywood's doing?
I mean, we've discussed it. I think really what it comes down to, though, is do we want to pursue film? That's a big struggle for us right now, at least for me. I mean, I don't want to speak for Glennie, but having that whole project just get annihilated really kind of took the wind out of my sails, in terms of like, this is just a lot to take, a lot of you to put into something for it to go nowhere.
Yeah.
Could we discuss the curse, Mike?
Sure, go discuss the curse.
I remember, so obviously I kind of jumped on board the Dawnward team, as it was named later. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome, we should do it. And Mike, for good reason, was always like, but do you want to do a short? Should we do a short? Because the curse was, before Downward, the short film, apparently they had attempted multiple shorts, and either they weren't finished in post, or they didn't come out that great. And then they get Downward, and Downward was really good. So you tried again, and it didn't work. I remember I wrote a script, but it was just a funny script, and then Mike was like, this is awesome. And we put all this effort into doing this short film that I had written, and just everything went wrong on it. I think one night someone forgot to bring their audio equipment, so they jimmied together some audio equipment, and it was garbage.
They actually forgot they had the recorder, they had the microphone, but the headphones had a very specific jack.
Yeah.
So they did not have the right jack for the sound recorder. So they just set the levels and then said, we'll just let God sort it out, and pushed record.
And God sorted it out one way or the other.
And it was an overnight shoot too.
Yeah.
So,
and then so like that, after that experience, I remember going, oh, I get the curse now. And then the curse was kind of broken with Ascendance, because that did well, and it turned out real well, especially when Mike stayed in New Zealand and shot a lot of other short films out there. So it's kind of like, cool, some momentum. But that 2019, 2020, we worked really hard to get something going, and to have the rug just pulled out from under us. It really was kind of like, well, crap. So yeah. What was the question?
So, okay. Well, while we're talking about stuff that's not crap, we're going to show you some of the art that they put together on the screen. Doc, ask them the questions while I maneuver the art.
So, what age is the general aim for your franchise here?
Ortiz.
Like, are you thinking an audience that's a YA audience, or an audience that's, upper teens or adults, or all ages?
I would say, honestly, it'd be probably 16 to 35 would be the average target age. I will say, due to us being able to track YouTube, we have laughed a lot, because our viewership has been 50 to 65-year-olds with zero idea why. Zero. I have no explanation.
It may have something to do with also that is the demographic utilizing it, that platform.
It could be. Maybe the youngins are all on their TikToks and their Instagrams.
Or they're using their parents' accounts, or grandparents, whatever.
I don't know, but yeah, but tracking those metrics has been a wait, what? So I don't know, but yeah, generally speaking, I would say it's less of a YA and more of a late teen into full adult. That's not me trying to dismiss YA. It's just not.
No. It's not dismissing, and I'm glad you didn't say new adult, because new adult is not what you want to be going for. New adult is like the mature romance of YA.
Ooh.
Yes. And so I'm glad you didn't use that phrase.
Interesting. I think it kind of depends on the genre as well. Because I know moving forward, as Mike said, we probably have combined 10 to 20 different novel ideas that we want to get to in the future. And some of those are probably more maturely based as far as gore, language, etc. And there's a couple ideas that do kind of have, I've never heard the term new adults before, but might actually fit into that category as well. So it kind of depends on the story. The books that we've already published, like Mike said, that demographic, but I think going forward, it kind of depends on the book and what kind of genre the book falls into.
Okay, so it'll be subject to the specific property.
Sure.
So JR, did you put up their cover? Is this their
Yeah,
cover?
they don't actually have cover or movie posters, but they had some sample art I grabbed from their website, which is what we're looking
and that's
at.
what you've been showing us. I love it. Did you do the art, guys, or did you have did you find some really talented people?
So due to some of my background, I have worked with a lot of especially like board game and card game artists. And so a lot of this has just been through working with them. And because if you work with someone long enough, you kind of build that relationship and you can say, hey, like once this project's done, do you have any availability? And a lot of them will be like, yeah, sure. Well, could you do this piece for me? And that kind of got the ball rolling.
I think this is my favorite piece, the one JR is currently showing right now.
This is the cover art for the first novella, Storm Crows. So yeah,
I really love it.
Yeah, we quite like this piece as well. This is an artist that we use on the regular now. I found him randomly, actually, by just trying to find someone who I didn't hate on the internet. I think the hardest
There are people you don't hate on the internet?
One of the hardest.
Obviously, you haven't done it.
On the internet.
So
we also just had an issue of how many people wouldn't get back to us.
Yeah.
It was super frustrating when especially when you're like, I will pay you. I will give you money. This is not me asking for free. And then crickets. You're like, okay, well.
Yeah, I think some of it is people don't want to be that person to say no.
So I mean, it's fair. It's easier to ghost somebody than not.
But what I was going to ask is, and we can just leave this here because it's a pretty view, is what is this universe? Like, what would your 30-second to a minute pitch for what is the Dawnward universe? Or the story within it that you're writing, the book?
I'm wondering if Glennie wants to answer. I don't want to step on his toes.
I could go for it. I might be a little shaky, but I would say, so this is what I told Mike Ortiz when he first started kind of explaining to me the background of this. So pretty much it's post-apocalyptic. The current time era is about 800 to 900 years after the big post-apocalyptic nuclear war. And what you have is a faction of super soldiers, that's the Dragoons in armor, pretty much find themselves, I'm going to skip some of the mythology just to make it short. They find themselves feeling like with the history of mankind nuking themselves and almost annihilating themselves, these super soldiers are going to be the police of the world. So now you have humans who like them, humans who don't like them, humans who want to kill them, humans who don't want any part of them. You have another island across the sea who are doing their own thing with their own kind of superhuman protectors, if you will, that are kind of machines. And so what I told Ortiz is, with the depths that this has and the universe it created, it felt to me like a sci-fi Game of Thrones.
That would be a really good show.
Yeah, different levels, different factions, different characters. That's what really drove me to it. And then I started kind of creating my own characters and added on to what Mike had already created. And so that's what the sum of it is, pretty much a sci-fi Game of Thrones.
Is it set on Earth?
Yes.
That is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi Game of Thrones is a really good selling pitch, to be honest.
So the island with the robots, would that be Japan?
That'd be Australia.
Really?
Renamed something else, but yes.
Okay.
You can see it.
So is Australia still trying to kill you just with the animals there?
No,
I never thought of that.
It's completely different. Australia is nothing like. So due to the time, due to the cataclysm, due to all that, nothing is quite the same as we think of it today.
Yes,
Okay.
except for I will give JR this one. It seems like everything on that continent is designed to kill humanity.
Oh, sure.
Even the cute fuzzy ones that should be so cuddly.
Drop bears.
And that would just be a great thing to continue as a theme for that continent in your universe.
I never even thought of that, but you're right.
There would be.
Just a murder continent.
So
it's so cute. Die.
So what is it you think that makes the Dawnward universe so special? And since it was your idea initially, we're going to ask you, Ortiz.
So I think one of the things that makes it so unique is the fact that, beyond just all the trappings, beyond this and that, it boils down a lot to this question of who has the right to hold the destiny of humanity. Is it us? Is it humanity itself? As we've shown, we are destructive creatures and we can be evil at times. So should it be someone else? Should it be like a higher being? And I think bringing that question to the forefront and putting it in a tangible way where it's not in like a religious sense, but in a very flesh and blood, choose this or choose that, makes it very interesting and fairly unique compared to a lot of other science fiction settings.
Okay, so you mentioned that the super soldiers were, genetically engineered. Now, in order, obviously, in the post-apocalyptic, maybe some of that technology didn't survive. Is it something they can reproduce on their own, or do they have to continually be made in the lab? Because they're giving me some very Spartan vibes.
So one of the things that's very interesting that you bring up Spartans. So one of the big differences between Dragoons and Spartans is that Dragoons are actually a race. They are a species. They breed sexually just like any human being. So if your mother and father were Dragoons, you would be a Dragoon. This also leads us to the path where if one of your parents is not a Dragoon, you are now a half-breed. And where do you fit into this society? Because you are not full blood enough to be one of these basically demigods. But then at the same time, you're above the human populace who will probably hate you because, you're kind of this outcast from both worlds.
Okay, so the sort of having to find your own way, or maybe even bands of the half-breeds banding together because nobody else wants them, really, if they don't fit in either camp.
Sure, and one of the joys of the universe is how much story material just exists. In some cases, the major Dragoon clans, the one you see pictured here, they actually use the half-breeds as kind of a monastic suicide army where, they taught them that they are impure for being half-breeds. So if you want to show that you're better than that, well, strap on this armor and go die.
So it's sort of like Halo meets the Mandalorian, almost?
I mean, you could see there can be some of that kind of cobbled in there, that's for sure. Halo is very much, the conflict of humanity versus aliens, and us kind of rediscovering a galaxy in a way.
I was more speaking to the warrior culture that the Dragoons had, as opposed to, and it was almost the Mandalorian being almost monastic in the way they sort of are portrayed. Similar, I guess, to the Templars almost.
There's definitely a lot of historical reference pulled, things like, you said Templars, even like the Teutons, the samurai, obviously classic Spartans, just a lot of ancient warrior cultures kind of analyzed. Even the name Dragoon is meant to be pulled from the old, unit of cavalry that was rapidly deployed infantry, the cross between a horseman and a rifleman. And that's their concept of war, is that I can move as quickly and as fast and hit you as hard as I can, then it doesn't matter how much you outnumber me.
Okay. So this universe has lots of characters in it. There's several properties that you've developed along the way. And since we're talking about the universe specifically right now, and at some point I'd like to have you guys back to talk about any of the specific books once I start reading those. But for now, since we're talking more broadly, do you have a favorite main character? And if you do, what can you tell us about him?
Oh, interesting.
Go, Glennie, go.
I have a couple that I like. there's one character. He's only appeared in one of the books so far. His name's Creus. He's kind of like a if the Alpha Clan, that's the clan that you see here, was the white supremacists, he'd be all about it. He'd be the one with the swastika on his arm. He's like, I am an Alpha Clan guy. Like he's very much about it. And then there's some characters that Mike has created even before I came on board that I really enjoyed. There's a character named Jeremy Bloomer, who's kind of the next in line to lead the Alpha Clan. And without too many spoilers, he's not a popular figure in the clan. And you know how that, leads out. Yeah, who else? Mr. Ortiz, who else do I like?
I think one of the things I'll throw in is Kirkland. So
I'm trying to avoid Kirkland, but yeah.
So in Dawnward, and by Dawnward I mean Downward, because I love super confusing names. Yes, so the first short film we made for Dawnward, before it was called Dawnward, was Downward. I know. Yeah. It was actually one of those placeholder titles where I was like, we'll come up with something better, and we never did. But we had to, I'm writing a script, I'm pitching it out to this producer, and I just need a Dragoon. I need a character. And so I invented this guy named Kirkland, and he was played by the wonderful Ethan McDowell, who people might know from Ms. Marvel, The Walking Dead, Doom Patrol, trying to think, Teenage Bounty Hunters. He's in a ton of stuff.
He's popped around, yeah.
Yeah, just a fantastic human being and a super talented actor. And people loved him. I don't know if it was the character and him at the same time. Probably was like a combo. And I got asked dozens of times at the end of that, once people had seen that movie, well, what happens next? What happens with him next? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't care. Like, he was just literally created for this tiny little thing. And so then when we were making another film, we made Ascendance, Kirkland came back. And so to the point that now in the first 4 novellas, he is a character. And so while he's not necessarily my favorite character, I do think to me, he has come a really long way from a random guy that I just wrote down to be a name on a script, to, being the most featured character in any of our properties.
That's
Kirkland,
hilarious.
Kirkland's the dude with the helmet on in this graphic.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the left there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ascendance novella, which is, basically a novelized version of a short film, but just expanded greatly because you don't have to worry about any times restraint or budget or anything like that, is a lot of his story and his background and just who he is. So it was actually a lot of fun to write that, because it was just taking this character who kind of was nothing and crafting them into a full conflicted being. But personally, my favorite character to write is Talia, and that's the woman in the middle without her.
I was going to say she was probably, out of the characters I have not written, Talia is probably my favorite as well.
So she is very much conflicted in her own right. Her view of the world has been challenged multiple times, and as the novellas go on, it kind of keeps getting challenged, and it kind of shapes her into just kind of realizing that everything that she believed isn't quite as black and white as she was taught. One of the important things.
Go ahead.
So I didn't want to. I was just going to say, one of the important things that I think is always good to note is that while Dragoons are cool, they're badasses and they got their armor and their guns, they're not necessarily good people. They're not necessarily heroes. They've all been raised on a diet of pretty severe propaganda that teaches them they're superior in every way. That doesn't breed kind people.
Okay. That's deep. So do you have any favorite secondary characters? Or supporting cast, if you would?
I'll let Glennie go first.
I thought Ortiz was going to say a character named Jingles.
What?
Okay.
He's in Ascendance, right?
want Shingles?
Shingles, sorry, Shingles, Mr. Shingles. Yes, he's a character who appears in the Ascendants short film and a couple other of the short films. He's played by a good guy named Chris Lippitt, and he's a hilarious character to watch. He's one of the goofier characters, yeah.
So when we were doing Ascendants, we were doing all these auditions, and we were stateside, so the director, who was a Kiwi, and some of the people over there were doing the auditions, and this guy showed up to every audition. Even like the 9-year-old little girl, he's there. Either he's reading to help somebody, have lines to feed off of, or he is literally auditioning. And I was like, this guy's really dedicated. We should give him something. So in Ascendants, there's a scene in the bar, and yeah, he has one goofy line. Then yeah, he's a comedian, so he kind of just reappeared in project after project slowly. I don't know if he's my favorite.
What is it? The Phil Carson from Marvel, who just kind of randomly showed up. Yeah. The next thing you know, he has his own fandom.
Yeah. Phil Coulson.
Coulson, thank you.
So obviously every novel, every film, every graphic novel, since you're going there, is going to have their own property specific bad guy. But is there an overarching bad guy in this universe other than apparently nuclear warheads?
Yes.
And either one of you can answer this.
Yes, there is. There is.
Can you tell us without spoilers? Because obviously we want people to enjoy it first.
I think the easiest way to describe it is you said it yourself that Dragoons had to come from somewhere. So we'll leave it at that.
Ooh, I like that. That's cool, and that's enough to wet the whistle, so to speak. So you've mentioned the graphic novels, the books, and some of the short films that are already out. Where do you see your focus with this universe going forward?
Yeah, I think we'll continue doing the novels and novellas because they're a dependable way. Like Mike said earlier, it's kind of we have control of it. We're not going to lose sponsors or investors. But I know, like Mike said earlier, we've talked about doing graphic novels, possible tabletop games. I think we're on the same page with this too. We would like to do a film again if the opportunity presented itself and the level of risk was low. But generally speaking, novels, graphic novels, tabletop games, etc. Yeah, Mike, is that about accurate?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Obviously, I mentioned audio dramas, I mentioned audiobooks. We had considered animation for a long time. It's just still a big avenue, a big question mark to explore. So with all of these things, it's just a lot of feeling things out. But I think within the next, we've kind of decided that by 2025, we want to do something large, whether that is like a full graphic novel or that is a full board game, or we've discussed releasing like a paper and dice RPG book. So, and a lot of it's just ways for people to kind of explore and become engrossed in the world. As I said, there's a lot of narrative potential for this. And even the world itself did get fleshed out quite a bit over, my youth by turning it into an RPG. And then it kind of got rekindled in, I want to say like 2012. I was working for this company called Games Workshop. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Heard of them.
I have a whole bunch of Games Workshop.
And so through that, I met some people, and we made like a cyberpunk RPG set in the Dawnward universe. It all took place in one city, one of these like corporate city states, and you were just kind of lowly kind of gunslingers trying to work your way up through fame and fortune. And people really loved it. And the system was janky, but the guy I ran it with, he actually is in the Air Force right now, and I don't know where he's stationed, but he messages me occasionally being like, do you want to revisit this? And we can actually update the system and kind of make this, a viable thing. So that's been something that's been floated around quite a bit, and we are discussing it. But, you know, so yeah, by 2025 we're going to do something big. That's the goal. Glennie, you've heard it. You've heard it first.
All right. So assuming that you might want to crowdfund it, since some of the funding has dried up the more conventional ways. If you do like Kickstarter or any of those methods, you have to come back here and we'll pitch the thing to our audience, because we like supporting those kinds of projects. And Doc is over here crying to herself about all the money she spent on her plastic Warhammer miniature. So she might need a moment.
I didn't get involved in drugs. It's all good.
It's all right.
It was never any money or time. I had a Sisters of Battle, Wood Elves Army. He's saying this because in my family, we had 15 armies at one point.
That sounds like a great time.
And only 5 people.
No, I mean, that's 3 armies per people. So that sounds perfect.
I mean, they might have had to get a second mortgage on the house to pay for the plastic, but
worth it.
3D printing has come a long way. So
yes,
I'm
it
just
has.
saying.
So, anyways, getting back on topic, JR, despite the fact that I love GW, I love Sisters of Battle.
Good old sororitas.
Yes. So every universe has its own internal consistent rules in technology, but of all of what is out there in this universe, what is it that you would want to have in today's world if you got to take one thing home and keep it and make it real? What would it be?
Ooh.
We like asking the fun, hard questions.
That is difficult.
Yeah, I don't. Give me a second.
I mean, that armor looks pretty sweet. Just
that armor is pretty sweet. I imagine it's also really heavy.
Oh,
I mean, I think I'd really like, wetware, like cerebral plugins.
Okay.
Because, I mean, how great would it to be to basically, you have an auto translator in your head, you have your phone in your head, like you don't got to carry anything around. You're just, oh yep, I just sent a text to that person. Sounds good. We're gonna go over here and oh, by the way, I'm sending a fax to you over on the other side of the building while I'm eating lunch, while I'm also I don't know, the amount of times that I feel like I don't have enough time in the day to do things makes it feel like if I could do something in my own mind would be pretty liberating and terrifying at the same time. But yeah, I think I'd like some cybernetic wetware.
Okay.
What about you, Glenn?
I was trying to think of all the different things, and one thing I remember it was in one of the novellas that Ortiz wrote. It was almost like a virtual reality, but instead of like the Oculus, which is kind of junky at times, it was actually like you were actually there. And granted, in that novel, things go wrong with it, but assuming it works correctly, I think that would be kind of a cool thing to have.
Okay. And if it doesn't work correctly, I mean, it'll be over for problems for you pretty quickly.
I mean, I'm having a good time either way.
Because you had a
well, yeah. I'm sorry.
It's a decision I'll make, and I guess I'll just have to live or not with the consequences.
Well, there you go.
It's like they say, was that famous Shrek line, since we've decided it was sci-fi somehow, and you got to tell us how, people, because I'm too lazy. If they die, they die.
Yep.
I think that was just the Army's secret slogan. Or no, sorry, that's
true.
Congress's.
Isn't that what frickin' they say in Rocky? Isn't that what Drago says?
Oh, yeah. It is. You're right.
If he dies, he dies.
That sounds
this is
like
why we like them, Doc.
Sure.
All right. So
I like them because they know what his workshop is.
I knew what it is. I just never played.
Right,
I was too poor.
Right over there is a whole bunch of Black Library books. So
yes, teases my people.
All right. So clearly this interview is winding down. We could probably go on a lot because this is a rich and deep universe. So we'll probably have to have you back for some of your books. But was there anything about the Dawnward universe that you think the listeners or the viewers need to know before we wrap this up? Like, is there anything we missed?
Ortiz, should I start?
I would love for you to start. You're just so handsome.
He says that on camera. What I kind of like about this is even if you're not into sci-fi, there's something for everyone. Like everyone that I've known that I've told about it finds something in it that they like. Like there's so many layers to it. And granted, especially with as many or the stories we have, it's still very young. A lot of people, if they read the ones that Mike has written, Ortiz, or the one I've written, there's something in there for everyone. It's kind of like so obviously I said I own a restaurant, a bar and grill, if you will. So I'm a big craft beer drinker. I always tell people it's not that you don't like beer, it's that you haven't found the beer style that you like yet. And that's what I kind of feel about this. It's that not if let's say you read my book and you didn't like it. I think it's like not that you don't like the universe, you just haven't found the thing you like in it yet. Like there's a lot of different flavors and a lot of different tastes. And that's kind of what I think about it in general.
Do you think that it does? Do you think you run the risk of doing too much? I mean, obviously every universe has room. You could easily tell romance and horror in the same universes. Do you think you run the risk of almost diversifying too much within the universe?
I think it's one of those things that you have to know your limits and know the moderation to where you do it enough to where it's diverse, but not too much to where now it seems like you're creating different properties that are kind of in different universes. So I think we could do it and it'll be successful as long as it's in moderation and we don't go overboard with it.
All right, it's fair. Did he miss anything, Ortiz?
I mean, one of the things I will share is that it's still evolving and growing as well, like the universe itself. I think that's also kind of an exciting place for people to jump in on, is the fact that it's a living, breathing thing that isn't just done and dusted. It's, we have different avenues that we want to explore. We have a bunch of different stories that we want to explore. And, even just the other day, Glennie and I had a discussion about updating the map and adding a city. And he's like, we should add this city. And we literally developed an entire culture of that city through the course of our short conversation. And by the end of it, I was mad that I wasn't writing about that city because it sounded cool. And so, there is always the risk of over diversification. I think that's true with any franchise, but we also need to try as many different avenues as possible to kind of see where people gravitate to. If we hug too close to, say, military science fiction, which has a very dedicated fan base and always will, it may also drive away people that they're not even going to pick it up because they're like, oh, that's not my wheelhouse. One of the things that always struck me really profoundly about the short film Downward was the director that we had chosen told me up front very early on, I do not like science fiction. It does not interest me. It is not a genre I like. And I said, that's fine. Then don't direct it like a sci-fi movie. Direct it like a war film. And he did. And the end product, I think, is really emotional because that's what he punched at, is the humanity of it. And so I think that is one of those, unique potentials where we can tap into various aspects of what people like. Granted, we can do it too much and then nobody knows what we're about. But for now, we are evolving and growing and kind of playing the field, so to speak.
Okay. Well, we have to end somewhere, so I'm going to remind you, dear listener, that the creative process is symbiotic with you, the consumer of said product. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers and viewers find the right books and movies. So do your part. Especially is true with them, given that their movies, at least, are on YouTube. And so the likes, the views, the shares, all of that helps the algorithm to help other people find them. It works the same on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and the site. So doing your part really does help. And tell a friend, tell your neighbor, tell everybody they want to watch these movies and read these books. With that being said, we're going to start with you, Glennie, just because you are at the top of the screen right now. Can you tell our listeners and viewers how they can find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
Yeah, sure. You could always add me on Instagram, my personal page. It's I am Glenny with the underscores between the words. You could also, again, find my podcast with a different group of people, the Fake Philosophers, on Spotify and YouTube as well. And then the Dawnward Universe, our stuff. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we have our webpage, dawnwarduniverse.com.
All right. And what about you, Mr. Ortiz? Can you tell listeners and viewers how they can find you?
I mean, the easiest way is just to go through the Dawnward socials. I'm a little bit of an old soul in that, like, I don't know, I don't have a lot of social media. Maybe that's just because I'm just so kind-hearted and I don't need to. No, it really just comes from the fact that I never know what to post. So even like my personal Facebook, I barely post anything. But the Dawnward socials are the best way to track down us and our stuff. So whether that is through Facebook, Instagram, etc. So that is the Dawnward Universe.
Okay. And he's also not saying it, but, OPSEC is a thing too, people. So we don't want those Dragoons to find out what he's doing. Just he's got to be safe. All right. So with that being said, you can find us on our. So I almost closed without telling me how to find us. It's Doc's fault though, just so you know. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/a Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, /groups/a Blasters and Blades podcast. We do have a Facebook page that needs a few more likes and follows so we can get a dedicated URL where I share all kinds of cool book reviews, including at some point in the near future, reviews from the Dawnward universe. We have a website, anchor.fm/blasters and blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. These shows are not free to produce, and so we appreciate your patronage. And if you wanted to support the show more directly, you can support us over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly caffeinated. They will drink until their liver explodes.
Never.
All right, bring us home, Doc.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee Nick Garber, for the Addlebrain JR, I am Cisca, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. Be sure to tune in next time, where we will indulge our love of torturing JR, mocking Nick, and of course, all things wonderful in fandom. And pineapple on pizza, because it's the best.